If you click this video, you most likely are the brand new owner of the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. And I just want to say congrats, you've bought yourself a great camera. Now it's time to get the best possible looking footage out of this camera, and I'm here to help. So let's go over the best video settings for the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II and some tips and tricks on how to get the best cinematic footage coming out of this camera. First, let's look at resolution and frame rates. To select the right resolution and frame rates, we're gonna go to the camera menu and select file format. If we're gonna be filming long talking headshots, for example, in the studio, and I wanna preserve the file sizes, I'm gonna film then in XAVC HS 4K. And then I'm gonna go to movie settings and select 25 frames per second or 24 frames per second if you're in North America, and then 140 megabits 422 10-bit. Filming in the XAVC HS 4K file format is gonna give you a lot more manageable file sizes. But then when I need really high quality footage and I need an easy, smooth editing experience, I'm gonna use the XAVC SI 4K. The file sizes are gonna be bigger, but the quality of the footage is gonna be a lot better, and the editing process is gonna be a lot smoother with this file format. When it comes to frame rates, when I'm just talking or vlogging, I'm gonna be filming at 25 frames per second because I'm in Europe, but if you're in North America, you're gonna film at 24 frames per second. And then if I want nice slow motion footage, then I'm gonna be filming at 50 frames per second and then 60 frames per second for those of you guys in North America. When filming in these 4K file formats, because it is really high quality footage, you are gonna have to have a fast memory card. So you can get the Sony Tough SD cards, or you can get the Pro grade SD cards, which are half the price, but still really high quality. So make sure you have the right SD card, otherwise you're not gonna be doing too much shooting. Next, we're gonna be talking about picture profiles. Now, because the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II is a 10-bit camera, you can actually take advantage of filming in a log picture profile. Because before with the Sony ZV-E Mark II, it was just an 8-bit camera and you didn't really want to film in a log picture profile because there's gonna be banding and the colors just weren't there to film in that profile. But now that the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II is a 10-bit camera, you can make use of S-Log3. To choose the right settings, you're gonna press the function button and then you're gonna go to the top left corner to the picture profile button, and then I'm going to scroll down all the way down to PP11 and make my own picture profile. And what we're going to do is first we're going to select S-Log3, and then we're going to go down and select S-Cine Tone. Now, some people do prefer to choose S-Gamut 3 Cine, but I prefer the S-Cine Tone because I feel like it's just a little bit easier to color grade with. So unless you're doing really heavy color grading, then you would want to do the S-Gamut 3 Cine. But if you want to do just light color grading, then I think the S-Cine Tone is great for that. If you do find color correcting and color grading a bit overwhelming, especially when it comes to S-Log3 footage, I've actually released my own Cinema collection just for you to help you out, because it doesn't have to be as daunting as you feel. With my Cinema collection, it comes with one conversion LUT for the S-Log3 S-Cine Tone footage. Basically, you just take one custom LUT, throw it on there with the conversion LUT, and it's gonna take it from that really flat picture profile to a normal contrast and saturation again. And then from there, you're gonna bring a second LUT, and then you can choose from 10 different grading LUTs. You're gonna choose one of them and then adjust the strength from 100%, because you don't want that strong, down to maybe in between 60 to 70, 75%. It's totally up to you depending on how strong you want the look to be. Then from there, you just gotta do some minor tweaks with the color wheels. You can adjust the white balance and the exposure, and voila, that 3-step system, you've done the color correction, the color grading, and you've got nice looking footage coming out of your camera in minutes, maybe even seconds. If you are interested in getting some help with your S-Log3 footage, highly recommend checking out my Cinema collection. I'll make sure to link it down below. It costs $50. It's gonna save you a whole bunch of time, and it's gonna get you really nice cinematic colors in seconds. When it comes to filming in S-Log3, a lot of people ask me, how do you expose for it? And I find when you expose just a little bit brighter, it's gonna come out a lot better. So I often have it around 1.7 plus, meaning it's gonna be a little bit brighter, but don't worry because when you actually bring it into the editing program and you put my conversion LUT, it's gonna look good right away. Another tip for filming with S-Log3 is to use the Gamma Display Assist, because when you have the S-Log3 picture profile on, you're gonna notice that your footage just looks really washed out. There's no contrast, there's no saturation. So it's hard to know how is it looking from an exposure perspective and white balance. But by having the Gamma Display Assist on, it's gonna allow you to see the footage when it would look like when it's back to Rec 709. So in order to turn that on, all you're gonna do is go down all the way to the briefcase looking symbol in your menu. Then go to number 8 on the menu and select Gamma Display Assist on. Then choose Gamma Display Assist S-Log3 to 709, which is gonna give you the look that you have when you've color corrected to Rec 709. So it'll match to what it's gonna look like then in your editing program. Using Gamma Display Assist is really gonna help you when you're filming with a log picture profile. Next, we're gonna talk about camera settings. At this point, we've talked about the file format, the resolution, frame rates, and the picture profiles. But it's also really important that we have the right camera settings in order to get the best looking footage coming out of your Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. So first, let's talk about shutter speed. Depending on what frame rate you chose to film in, whether that was 25 frames per second or 50 frames per second, if you're me, you're always gonna wanna double your frame rate. So your shutter speed then should be 1/50th or 1/100th. And the reason why you want to do this is that by doubling the frame rate with your shutter speed, you're going to get the best amount of motion blur in your footage to get that really nice cinematic look. Even in this example, you can see when I've doubled the shutter, there's a nice motion blur with my hand waving, but if I've cranked up the shutter really high, there's no motion blur and it just doesn't look natural to the eye. If you notice that when you're shooting at 1/150th or 1/100th and you're noticing it's just way too overexposed, then you're gonna have to use something called an ND filter, which is essentially just like sunglasses for your camera. It's just gonna darken the footage, allowing you to shoot at the shutter speed that you would like. I'm using the Peter McKinnon variable ND filter from Polar Pro, and I can link it down below for you guys to check out. When it comes to aperture, most of the time I'm shooting at the lowest possible aperture for that specific lens. For example, with zoom lenses, I'm gonna be shooting at 2.8. Or then if I have a prime lens, then I'll be shooting more from 1.4 to 2.0. The reason for this is that I like to have that nice shallow depth of field in my footage, but of course there might be situations where you wanna increase your f-stop. For example, if you're doing a really close up of someone's face and you want all of it in focus, you don't want just the eye in focus, but then the nose out of focus, then you might wanna increase the f-stop higher. Or for example, if you're shooting a landscape shot and you don't want just a small sliver of your scene sharp and in focus, then you want to increase your f-stop again. But in general, I'm shooting 2.8 or lower because I do want that nice shallow depth of field. For ISO, you're going to want to use the base ISO, and when you're shooting in S-Log3, that's ISO 800. Again, same situation. If you notice that ISO 800, your footage is just way too overexposed, you're gonna have to again use a variable ND filter to make it darker. And of course, if you are in a dark environment, you can increase your ISO, but you don't want to go below 800 because 800 is the base ISO for S-Log3 footage. Next, we're going to talk about lens choices. A lot of times people assume that it's all about what camera you're using, but actually your camera choice is probably 1/3 of the equation. Then what lenses you use is another third of the equation, and then what kind of lighting you're using is another third. Those thirds aren't exact, but you get my point. It's a mixture of having a great camera, having great lenses, and having great lighting. Two different kinds of lenses I like to use are zoom lenses and prime lenses. When it comes to zoom lenses, I like to make sure that they have a minimum aperture of 2.8 to get that nice shallow depth of field. When it comes to zoom lenses, I like them for run and gun situations where I don't have the time to go and just switch out lenses. Rather, I want to have one lens that covers my bases. But if I am in situations where I'm not in such a run and gun situation, then I love using prime lenses. For example, this is the Sony 11mm 1.8, which is great for vlogging. It gives you that really nice shallow depth of field. Or this is the Sony 15mm 1.4. Again, another great lens to get shallow depth of field and filming B-roll. The great thing about the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II is the fact that because it is an APS-C camera, a lot of times APS-C lenses are a lot more affordable and way smaller, so that is a nice perk about having the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. Lastly, when it comes to getting a great image out of your camera, we need to talk about lighting. Because it's only half the battle to have a great camera and a great lens, because we still need great light. Because no matter how amazing your camera is, if you're in a really dark situation with no light, it's not gonna help you out. If you're not gonna be filming in a YouTube studio like this and you're gonna be filming a lot more outside, keep in mind different times of the day is going to give you a different quality of light. For example, if you're filming during sunrise or sunset, it's going to be a lot more warm and soft. Whereas then if you film before sunrise or after sunset, it's going to give you that nice moody blue hour look. Or if you're filming in the middle of the day, it's gonna be a lot harsher with a lot more shadows. So either you gotta get creative and use those harsh shadows and harsh lighting to your advantage, or just go shoot out in the shade, because that's gonna give you a much nicer, soft lighting. So keep in mind, lighting is super important when you're shooting video with your Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. But that, in a nutshell, is how you get the most out of your Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe, because I'd love to have you here for the future.